as I'm falling, and I look to her and I say, like, hey, I have to warn you. I come with this like super dark hidden side that I've been hiding from everyone. No one knows about it. And she looked me dead in the eyes and said, that's why I love you. And I just fucking melted. That was like permanent.
Wow,
She
dude.
shouldn't have said that.
That's
She
a
shouldn't
good-
have done that.
Wow.
Right? It was too poetic. It like hit to this, my most unlovable, dejected self that I'd hidden from everyone.
Coming all the way from Minneapolis to Washington, D.C., we now bring you Enter the Freud.
Warning. This is for entertainment purposes only. It is no way medical advice. Listen at your own risk.
Okay. If you're ready, then I'm going to pose a question to you. And where you start, how you begin to answer this is going to send us down one of the million entryways into the subject.
Sweet.
Okay? So, first, my question to you is, why do people get divorced?
I mean, this question you're asking is, there's so, like you said, there's so many different roads we could go down. But here's another, if I try to like stay in big picture, relatively simple things, is that people never used to get divorced in most cultures for hundreds of years. Divorce wasn't really a thing. And now divorce is extremely common. And the reason for that is because prior to like the 20th century, marriage was a social, economic, familial contract. It wasn't a thing about romance and love. And then in the 20th century, we decided, oh, now marriage is about being in love and about eros and sex and romance. And that essentially brought this highly changeable, deeply emotional, passionate, and also people don't like to see it this way, but us depth psychologists know that love is really about, includes our pathologies and our juvenile, infantile, little kid unmet needs, and that we foolishly and immaturely fantasize that this new woman is going to meet all of the needs that I didn't have when I was a little kid. And being in love is like bringing that fantasy into a relationship, thinking that partner's going to now meet these things. And that thing is like this explosive, volatile, changeable thing. And we're trying to connect that thing with the old social structure of economics and laws and society, and putting those two things together is a recipe for disaster.
Hold on, I can do one better, right? Because as you point out, something that is essential, that it's true, each of us are putting on this tremendous expectation of kind of a resolution to unmet needs and or needs that maybe they're not unmet, but that we know a human needs. A source of reflection into what a person is and what they need, right? So, I'm sorry, this is getting totally convoluted. More importantly, that meets the reality of somebody who says, well, I need you to fold the towels in a way that actually has the emblem facing out. Okay? This fucking actually happened to me, right? I watched two people get a divorce over this, right? So you have this profound thing that needs to be met, but the lived reality is... yeah, I see why you're laughing.
It's so funny, dude, because it's so fucking absurd when you look at it, but that's why relationships end. Even more, I don't think that this was the case back in the 70s, but nowadays, it's like, you didn't fold the towels with the emblems facing out, so I need to divorce you. Like that, it seriously has come to that shit.
Yes. because the person tells them how important it is. Don't you see how important it is to me that you fold the towels? Can't you just do that to show me? Can't you fold them in a way that shows me that you care?
Yeah. Okay. So, I'm laughing because it's so absurd. But let's look a little bit into the psychology behind it, because then it doesn't seem so absurd. The person who needs the towels, emblem of the towels facing out, that symbolizes something to them. It symbolizes they have their life together. It symbolizes their partner sees what's important to them and takes time to do what's important to them. So these totally absurd things have symbolic meaning to a person, and the symbolic meaning goes back to what I was saying about like the unmet needs of childhood, or the painful experiences of childhood that all of us are foolishly, misguidedly hoping to correct in our marriages. And in my stupid brain, this thing happens where I'm like, if my partner folds the towels with the emblems out, then that means I have my life together in a way that I didn't as a child and my parents didn't. And that means I have someone who sees me, understands me, cares for me, and takes time to do what I need. And therefore, my childhood needs are met. And all that gets projected into the stupid fucking emblems of the towels pointed the right way.
Yes. And so, but look at what the person who's headed towards their own journey of individuation and assertion of their own autonomy and, let's just say, their individual expression as a mature human being. Mm-hmm. That person is being asked to do such a mundane task as to fold the towels, which then appears to be, in a way, an affront on their personal journey.
Right.
Thus, they rebel endlessly and fuck up the towels.
Yep.
Right, because why would you not just fold the towels?
Right.
Why don't you just fold the stupid ass towels? Well, it becomes this strange confrontation of, oh, you're going to try to tell me to do something so insignificant.
Yep.
Why can't you, if you're going to ask something of me, make sure that it's worth my attention and worth this is where it becomes massively skewed once you start to look at how are you valuing your life based on what you're currently achieving, how far you are in your career, what kind of a parent you are, what kind of a serious person, how serious does everyone take you? Well, imagine if in your everyday life you go to work and you're a goddamn surgeon and you're saving people's lives, and then you come home and you're told, you're not folding the towels. Well, how would you possibly react to that well?
Yep.
And the towels is just a silly example of everything that happens in a mismatched kind of a way. And then as a couples therapist, somehow it's your job to figure out, okay, what are these people actually trying to do?
Right, totally.
How are they going to where there's absolutely no guidebook to figure out the pursuit of is clearly an art form.
Basically, I've seen this a million times doing couples therapy, and it's so funny that what you're talking about, is like one of the most common couples therapy train wrecks. Is the person is getting upset about something to everyone else that just seems stupid, but for them it's charged with these old emotional needs and meanings about being happy in life. And then their partner comes home and they're like, "Rah!" And then the partner is just like, what the fuck, I can't deal with this. And then the partner just can't see that what's going on is let's just do the husband and the wife. Let me switch it around just to not be a misogynist. Let's say the husband is at home and the husband is having a temper tantrum about the towels. The wife is the lawyer. She comes home. The husband's like, honey, I asked you to do this thing and you didn't do it. And then the wife is like, oh my fucking God, I can't deal with it, because the wife just now thinks she's married to a fucking whining, sniveling little idiot. And so then they come into couples therapy. And our job essentially is to have the husband find his emotional needs, stop projecting them into the towels, and figure out how to express them in a mature adult way so that his wife can hear them and then meet those. And I make it sound easy, but it's almost sometimes it feels physically impossible to do that in couples therapy.
Which is why so many people think, because if you look at the statistics, the majority of people go to couples therapy and end up divorced. That's just how it plays out. I don't know if you knew that.
No, I haven't seen those stats.
Yeah, it was really weird when I found that out, because it certainly wasn't the case in my office. I felt like, oh shit, I must be skewed, and I'm somehow like trying to make people stay together, because I see couples that I think should get divorced, and then they work it out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, whoa. I'm like, I was 100% sure you guys were going to get divorced.
Yeah, totally.
And then some phenomenon occurs, and they come back and say, hey, doc, we did what you said. And I'm like, well, I don't tell you to do shit. I'm not someone who gives prescriptions like, hey, by the way, go. I guess sometimes I do. Sometimes I will tell them to go and sit in a place that they don't sit, like a neutral territory, have a discussion that isn't the one that they always have, make sure that they do something that would seriously reduce the likelihood that they have the exact same argument over and over again.
Totally.
So I will kind of give those prescriptions, but then they'll come back and tell me that I told them to do something that absolutely was not what happened. But I don't care, because the end result is somehow they have figured out and seen each other and met at a new point.
Yep.
And in that created a new contract.
Yep.
Right? The old, oftentimes unspoken contract that happens prior to marriage. I know that in marriage you say some vows and nobody fucking cares what they're saying, because it's so much pressure on you to do it in public, and nobody is even thinking about the fact that with that comes prior to you even getting married, you have you make this incredible contract of mostly unspoken agreements.
Totally.
That I will behave this way, and you will behave that way.
Yeah.
And then we will coexist happily.
Yep. And
well,
let me just say something. You use this term, mostly unspoken agreements, which is totally accurate. And like if a couple is to like be a more highly evolved, successful long-term relationship, and in this theory, I don't even know if I buy this, and ride the tide and stay together through the different adult stages of development, which I'm not really necessarily saying that's what you're supposed to do or that's the best way to happen. But if they are, then those unspoken agreements, which are unconscious dynamics of like two unconscious pathological infantile needs trying to get met in this new fantasy partner, they need to become conscious. So the unspoken agreements need to be spoken, made conscious, and then you have to like have a mature adult conversation about what those agreements are and kind of negotiate on to how to get them met. That's like what the process of like couples therapy needs to go through for the relationship to work.
For it to work, and for some reason, as you point out, it's incredibly elusive, even for somebody who's extremely trained and paying extreme attention to the process. Sometimes, as you point out, the path forward, it ignites fury within the people that are sitting in front of you. I remember one couple, this I think back in California, where they came in and we worked diligently for like an hour and a half on this plan of how it would potentially look moving forward.
Yep.
We mapped out their entire existence and what their current contract was, everything that was expected, and then what, if they were to move forward, what it would potentially look like. And in the end of the meeting, the lady looks at me and says, "What? You want me to do all that work?" and I was like, well, what the hell did you think this was? And she's like, I wanted this done yesterday. And then stormed out of the room. And that was it. I never saw them again.
And that's an example. I'm worried that I'm going to become a broken record in all of your and my podcast episodes. I think ultimately what that is there's this cultural wave of like American entitlement. America is increasingly become a country of princes and princesses and they want fucking life to be easy and to be handed to them. And this lady gets in a relationship, and she just wants the relationship to be easy and to be fucking handed to her. And when it's not, she has a princess temper tantrums. Not the way I want. I don't want to have to do work. I want it to be handed to me yesterday. It's like, well, good luck being in a fucking relationship then.
Well, absolutely. I don't think you're a broken record. That's the first time you brought this point up. I think that maybe several of your points do rotate around what some people refer to as snowflakes and or like this like horribly entitled, incredibly narcissistic type of person that America's pretty impressive at producing.
Yes.
As a whatever median that is,
Yep.
It's impressive watching that rise.
Yep.
Watching the rise of that type of a personality structure.
Totally.
And
yeah,
so,
there was that book that published a long time ago in the 70s. Christopher Lasch wrote it, called Culture of Narcissism. And the 70s, that's like, closing in on 50 years ago that thing was published. 50 years ago, And he already identified this, and it's gone up times 10 since then.
Absolutely.
We're becoming increasingly egocentric, increasingly entitled, and increasingly I think life should just unfold easily, and I could just walk down a red carpet and beautiful women will come and give themselves to me, and Ferraris will drive up and give themselves to me. It's like America's increasingly becoming that, and YouTube is increasingly becoming this platform for Americans to go on and have the camera and the lights on them and then complain about how life is not how it should be.
Yeah, that's crazy. Right, especially because here we are within this actual structure and confines of the idea of divorce, which is now massively shifted over to, well, how does marriage work? Mm-hmm. How does marriage work, and then how does it not work?
Yes.
And it turns out, well, this would have, if we were truly to piece this apart, it would take us 10 hours,
Yep.
and then we would really just have done the first book.
Yep.
The first book could be done in about 10 hours, and then we'd move on to volume 2.
Yep.
When you're 40,
Yep.
and you're like, crap. Okay, there's an entire volume.
Yeah,
And then,
but something about what you're doing makes me want to do a quick review and outline of what we said. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, so far we've said there's 3 main reasons that divorces happen. One is the adult stages of development, people change, and the chemistry, they grow apart. 2, I'll just say the one most recently. 2 is people have an immature, entitled sense that relationships should be easier and should make them happy without them having to do work. So they just are like, I don't want to do that much, so they throw it away. And then 3, this is the second one we talked about, but it's the most complicated, I left it for last, is, let's see if I can make this simple, is what falling in love is an unconscious, immature process of my unconscious, unmet emotional, relational needs from childhood. A person comes along, and I project and develop the fantasy that person is going to be able to meet my needs. That person does the same thing to me, so we have this interlocking mutual fantasy that we're going to go off to the land of milk and honey together because I finally met my soulmate.
yes.
But because it's unconscious and because there are these immature needs met, as time goes on and the person isn't the magical creature that meets all our needs, it starts to flies start to get in the ointment, and eventually the shit falls apart, and then both people regress, and they're like, you're not meeting my needs, you're not the Prince Charming I thought you were. Well, yeah, you're just a fucking annoying bitch, fuck you. And then boom, they break up.
Yeah. Well, so that the one you saved for last, even though it's hardest to describe, I can just give you a little story about once upon a time when I met Diane Cooper, right? I know that is funny, just mentioning it, right? So I meet Diane Cooper, and I don't know if you know this, but at some point, very early on, I looked at her and I was just like, I was falling headlong down. It was so obvious that this was just like, oh my God, this is my perfect partner, right? and I'm as I'm falling, and I look to her and I say like, hey, I have to warn you, I come with this like super dark hidden side that I've been hiding from everyone. No one knows about it. And she looked me dead in the eyes and said, that's why I love you. And I just fucking melted. That was like permanent.
Wow,
she shouldn't
dude.
have said that.
That's
she
a
shouldn't
good-
have done that.
Wow.
Right? It was too poetic. It like hit to this, my most unlovable, dejected self that I'd hidden from everyone, but she didn't know what the fuck she was talking about. She thought that, oh, you have this thing, it's kind of edgy and scary, and it's like cool, and that's why everyone thinks you're so cool. Yay! That's why I love you. But at that moment, I thought she was gazing into my soul,
Yes.
seeing the depths.
Yes.
And she just when she rang that bell,
Yeah.
I was literally struck, dude.
Yes.
Like Cupid's arrow, done. You could have just signed me up, sent me off. I would have done anything to make sure this existed. And then as time went on and I realized, she doesn't want me to be who I am. There's so many hints of like, hey, so could you just be more like this? And like, I need to yell at you and I need you to not get mad. So I'm just going to have to come in and do this whole weird thing that you're not used to, right? That normally in your past, if people yell at you like that, you smash their face. But right, if other people in my history would show that level of aggression towards me, I would literally beat them until they submitted.
Right.
Physically.
Right.
And here's this person telling me, oh, I just have to do this horribly verbally aggressive thing where I rip you to shreds. I say you're the most despicable thing I've ever seen in my life. How could I ever fall for you? You're so disgusting. And then you're supposed to just be like, oh, okay, are you done, babe? All right. Let's, you want to have sex now? Which she would often want to do. She would, like, after she would do this vomiting onto me, she would want to have sex. And I would be like, I would go, ha, get the fucking, like.
Wow, that's so interesting.
Yeah, I ended up, like, at one point, she was doing that kind of a barrage, which I wasn't used to. And I think I'm much more used to now, which is unfortunate that I've habituated to women yelling at me. But
Me too. I totally have too.
because at first I wasn't used to it. In
Yeah.
fact, it was no one had ever yelled at me before, because if they did, then they would suffer horrendous wrath.
Yeah.
Right? So she was doing this, and I just took a chair and threw it across the room straight out the front window and smashed the entire window out.
Wow.
And she immediately went from shrieking to, oh my God, like, are you okay?
That was the perfect intervention you did. It totally like defused and changed the situation in a perfect way.
And I was like, man, this is so. Every other week, should I throw the thing through the window? Because
Yeah.
that's kind of an expensive process.
Yeah. Well, maybe you just put plastic up on the window so that you can throw it out the window every week and you don't break anything.
Yeah, I meant for that to be a very quick story, actually, just to punctuate these.
Well, it's good to.
I get.
When you first told the story, it was like, oh my God, having real life stories is really helpful, because when you gave that story, it was just like, wow, yes, that's how it happens. You start to feel safe enough with her that you share this secret, like, whoa, there's a dark part. And then she comes back with this thing you never imagined, which is like, yes, that's why I love you. And that's just like blows your fucking mind. And that's just like such the perfect recipe for falling in love and just getting into this. And the romantic falling in love state is just this wildly fantastic, oh wow, this person I can show my whole deepest true self to, and not only will they love it, but they love me even more because I showed it. It's just like stokes this fire of this romantic fantasy.
Absolutely. It's so incredible when that person, like, their whole persona, their whole physical self reflects it back to you in this kind of a refracting way.
Yeah.
That is, it's like, it just reverberates through all of your genetic history, through the beginning of time.
Totally.
And you're just like, it's truly psychedelic.
Totally. Yeah. Let me give a less profound, but just more simple and clear example of this. I'll give my,
All right.
just like to help people really get their hands on this concept. Because yours is kind of like so cosmic and big. I just want to give like a small, easy to chew little morsel. So my mom, growing up, my mom's great, super fun, awesome, but
She is awesome.
She's kind of ADHD and she's kind of like she's just like in a super positive, fun way, but like her attention span and her ability, she's so anxious and her consciousness is so like that she can't like slow down and really actually sit and attune to another person because she's so preoccupied, I think, with her own anxiety. And so I think growing up as a kid, I just never had this experience of a mom who could really like calm her consciousness and attune to me. Like I just never had that. I actually learned to attune to her. I was like her parent in a certain way, and that's why I'm good at being a therapist, because I can really attune to another person. And I learned that because my mom needed someone to attune to her, so her little baby boy did it. But so I had, and this was all unconscious, I had no idea, but so I had this unmet need of having a woman like attune to me. And then when I met my ex-wife, she was super good at that. And I can vividly remember the very first day, you go out on a first date and like you go out and drink and whatever. But the first day we hung out, she just like sat silently and attended and attuned and listened to me and understood to me. And it was just like an absolute altered state experience of just like, wow, this is the best thing I've ever felt in my life. I must marry this woman. Because it's like this deep balm for this. It's like there's this little kid in me who's been dying of starvation for 20 years, and all the kid needs is this one magic little thing, and he can't find it. And then this woman comes in, and she has it, and she just has a huge well of this thing. It's just like, I'm in love, let's get married.
Dude, I can't believe you're going to have to listen to this afterwards because you think this story is less cosmic. That's going to be, you're going to die when you hear this because there's nothing less profound. In fact, your story was more compelling. Your story is more compelling, which this is what's so fucking crazy is how does it go from there to inevitably separation?
Yeah.
What the hell how is this a real thing?
Yeah.
Because once the hook is made, the arrangement occurs just psychologically.
Yep.
The psychological arrangement happens,
Yep.
and then everyone can see it.
Yep.
Everyone around you can see. I saw it instantly when I saw you two together. I was like, oh my God, these guys are permanent. They are the most permanent thing of every relationship I've ever seen in my life.
Yep.
Right? You two appeared to be that to me,
Yep.
and I often appear that when I click with other people.
Yep.
Oftentimes other people will tell me that they see me and that person as the ultimate that could never end.
Yeah, and that's we're getting changed. But I guess I'm just going back to adult stages of development. I just want to speak to that thing. That was kind of part of my personality and my meaning in life and my goal is for me in my marriage, I was going to be like, I'm going to like do a relationship right. I'm going to read all the books and I'm going to come up with the formula and the recipe that makes a relationship work. And then what I did is I kind of like tried to like this is how I got the recipe and the formula, and I'm gonna bronze this fucking thing because I'm gonna do it right. And in that, there wasn't room for this adult stages of development thing. It was like I thought you figure out the perfect recipe and then you bronze that shit and you got it right and it's perfect and you put it up on your mantelpiece and now you have a perfect relationship and it's bronzed and up on your mantelpiece. Mission accomplished. And there's no room in that for the adult stages of a development of change, which I don't know if there's a way to. I think the model of until death do us part is kind of an inherently bronzed thing. That's what it means,
Yes.
until death do us part.
Absolutely.
As opposed
Yes.
to a moving, living, changing thing.
Yeah, absolutely. This just reminds me of, remember at your wedding when your brother cried?
Yeah.
This is just a side note.
Yeah.
It was such an awesome example of a man crying, right? To this day, it's still one of my favorite ones, which is a weird thing to say, but it's just as he felt you could see the emotions coming out, and it was just pouring out, and then he fought them with kung fu. It was like he's like ha ha ha.
Yes, dude,
Remember
totally,
that?
that's exactly what he did.
He like fought them right in front of us.
Totally. Totally.
And I remember like, wow, that's awesome.
Dude, I can't believe you remember that so well. That was like 20-some years ago, and the kung fu thing is totally true, and I completely forgot about that. That's exactly what he did.
Right? And I wish in one of these stages of unbelievable ecstasy in finding the match, and you watch it somehow dissolving as you end up lonely and somehow not matching for more than a week, which now is a month, and now you're like, wait, how far are our worlds gonna get before we acknowledge that we're no longer the unity? And then I wish at that moment I could just do the kung fu, ha, hoo, hey, and then I would be fine. Right? I want to be able to, but no, I can't. It's literally like soul wrenching. Right? When you get in those fights, even the dude who fights about the towel, it's a joke, except I know, and anyone else who really knows about like being in conflict with your partner, it's devastating for days.
Yeah.
It rips your whole insides out. You can't focus, you can't concentrate. It does some kind of like, it's like a crisis that then emulates what you would experience in profound anxiety, depression, and whatever pathology. It's a unique pathology in itself. This like I'm fighting with my partner, and we may be headed to the catacombs.
Yeah, totally.
Right? What have you got to say to that, good sir?
I just kind of like went off, just there, I just sort of went off into this super big thing of like, man, because it sort of feels like you and I don't know if you were in this class with me. So Porn and I went to California Institute of Integral Studies, and we took my favorite teacher ever in my life is this dude named Richard Tarnas. And Porn and I took a lot of classes from him, and some of them Porn took with me. Like the one that me and Porn took together was called Western Spiritual Masters. And I think, I think in that, I just remember this quote, you won't remember it, but I think you were in the class with me, is Richard Tarnas said, relationships are the spiritual challenge of our time. And something, when you were just talking, I just kind of went off onto that. It's like, man, these relationship things, they're so, like when you fall in love, it's just the most intensely blissful, joyful, pleasurable thing. And then when you're in a breakup thing, or when you're in a jealousy thing, or when you're in a hatred thing, it's the most painful thing. And they're so hard. And I don't think there's any way to avoid the super intense, hard parts. And so I just sort of went into this like, wow, we humans, we're these like relational creatures. It's the spiritual challenge of our time to like engage in these wrestling matches. And like, we're not going to figure it out in my lifetime.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's really cool because there's kind of an intensity to the way that we were talking about this, almost as if there was like at least within myself, there's kind of like this pull or like a magnetism towards a gravity towards there is going to be some way that we can avoid it. There's going to be a way. You and I are going to figure it out. Let's
Totally.
talk this through.
Yes.
Let's talk this through, man. You and I are bright enough. We've been through a lot. We've seen it all. How many
Yes.
times have we watched? How many times have we watched and guided people through it? So
Totally.
we should be able to. We should make a predictive manual.
Yes.
We should be able to schedule it in. And if we're going to do that, let's schedule in so that our kids don't suffer. I don't
Yes.
want them to go through the teenage years.
Oh, man.
I don't want them to go through that whole thing where they have to become so awkward and then have to doubt themselves to the point it's fracturing.
Yeah.
Like I don't want people to have to go through this thing where their perfect love then fractures into that self of where the first time that happens when you're really young. I remember being like 16 or something, and I remember like falling in love, and it wasn't like it just wasn't working. And I remember lying there listening to Pink Floyd. I had like a tape deck sitting on my chest, and I could hear Pink Floyd, and it finally like really resonated with like profound emptiness and longing. Wow. And I don't even remember which song it was, because it could be any of theirs. There's just some like some rift that just went straight through me, and there in that moment I hardly existed.
Wow.
Hardly.
Yep.
Just like I could have left the planet at that point.
Yeah. Wow. We should probably end right there. That's a good place to end.
Okay.
Because we got you got an 11. You got a noon, right? I got an 11 class.
Yeah, I do.
Dude, that
Okay.
was awesome, man. It just keeps getting fucking better and better.